I came home early from a tech conference to find 120 relatives partying in my house under a Family Ties Endure banner. My brother and mother had planned it all without me. I didn't lose it. I outsmarted them. 2 weeks later, I had 105 missed calls, and my brother was screaming, "Family wasn't forever anymore." My name is Dr. Emily Harper, and I'm 32 years old. Until last week, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. Petty slights, ignored emails, the sting of being overlooked for a promotion you deserved. But nothing could have prepared me for the gut punch of walking into my own home and finding it hijacked by 120 strangers. My life's work violated, and my family's lies laid bare. I'm a cybersecurity expert, one of the best in Seattle's tech scene, and have spent years building systems to keep threats out. Turns out, the real danger was already inside my walls, wearing familiar faces and waving a banner that screamed, "Family Ties Endure." Let me take you back to that night, when everything I thought I knew about trust, loyalty, and home crumbled under the weight of a truth I never saw coming. It was a Friday evening, and the San Francisco skyline was fading in my rearview mirror, or rather, in the window of the Uber I'd caught to the airport. I'd just wrapped up a 3-day conference at Moscone Center, where I'd presented my latest breakthrough, an AI-driven encryption protocol that could revolutionize data security. The room had been packed with Silicon Valley's heavy hitters, Google execs, venture capitalists, even a couple of suits from the Department of Defense. When I finished my talk, the applause wasn't polite, it was hungry. Hands shot up with questions, business cards were pressed into my palm, and a Google VP invited me to dinner to discuss future synergies. I was on top of the world, my career finally hitting the stratosphere after years of grinding in Seattle's tech trenches. But I was also bone-tired. 3 days of networking, pitching, and dodging corporate headhunters had left me craving the one thing I couldn't find in a conference hall: my own bed. So I skipped the dinner, swapped my return flight for an earlier one, and landed at SeaTac just as the sun dipped below Puget Sound. In my carry-on were small tokens of affection I'd picked up in San Francisco: a snow globe from my mom, Margaret, who collected them like talismans; a bag of artisanal coffee from my brother Liam, who fancied himself a connoisseur; and a box of dark chocolate truffles for his wife Claire, because she'd once mentioned loving them. I imagined us sitting around the kitchen table in our Queen Anne home, maybe cracking open a bottle of wine, toasting my success. For once, I thought, they might see me, not the tech nerd they teased, but the woman who'd just held a room of industry titans spellbound. Naive, right? Hold that thought. The Uber dropped me off a block from my house because the street was a parking lot. Cars lined both sides, spilling onto the grassy verge. Sedans, SUVs, a beat-up RV with a California plate, and a sleek Tesla I vaguely recognized as my Uncle David's. My first thought was that a neighbor must be throwing a block party. Queen Anne's a ritzy neighborhood. Old money mixed with tech wealth and spontaneous bashes aren't unheard of. But as I wheeled my suitcase closer, the hairs on my neck prickled. The lights in my house blazed like a stadium, every window glowing against the dusk. Music pulsed through the walls, some cheesy pop anthem I didn't recognize, and laughter spilled out, sharp and carefree. My pace slowed. Something was wrong. I stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the front door of the craftsman-style home I'd poured my heart and savings into. The porch light was off, which was odd. I'd programmed it to turn on at sunset. My fingers brushed the key fob in my pocket, linked to the security system I'd designed myself, a system that had cost me 6 months of late nights to perfect, with motion sensors, facial recognition, and encrypted alerts tied to my phone. I pulled out my phone to check the app. No notifications, no alerts, just a blank status screen that made my stomach lurch. I tapped the app again, expecting the familiar green system-armed icon. Instead, a red warning flashed, "System offline." My breath caught. That wasn't possible. My system didn't just go offline. It was built to withstand power outages, hacking attempts, even physical tampering. Someone had disabled it. As I stood frozen, the suitcase handle digging into my palm, my mind raced through possibilities. Power surge, software glitch, maybe a bug I'd missed in the last update. But deep down I knew better. This was deliberate. I forced myself to move, climbing the porch steps with a calm I didn't feel. Through the bay window I caught a glimpse of movement. Dozens of people milling about, drinks in hand, kids darting between legs. A massive banner stretched across my living room wall, gold letters glinting under the chandelier. "Family ties endure." My key trembled in the lock, but before I could turn it, the door swung open, and I nearly collided with my cousin Laura, her wine glass sloshing as she gasped, "Emily, oh my God, you're here!" Her voice was too loud, her smile too tight. Heads turned in the foyer, conversations faltering like a record scratch. Laura's reaction rippled through the crowd, and soon I was the center of 100 curious stares. I gripped my suitcase, scanning the sea of faces. Some I recognized: Uncle David with his Tesla swagger, Aunt Patricia clutching a casserole dish, cousins I hadn't seen since my dad's funeral 6 years ago. Others were strangers, or near enough. Distant relatives from family reunions I'd skipped, their names long forgotten. My home, my sanctuary, was a circus, and I hadn't been invited. "Emily, sweetheart!" My mother's voice cut through the noise. Margaret pushed through the crowd, her arms outstretched, but her hug felt like a performance. "What are you doing home? We thought you were back tomorrow." Her eyes darted to the side, avoiding mine. I stepped back, my voice steady despite the earthquake inside me. The conference ended early. I caught a red-eye. I gestured at the chaos, spilled drinks on my hardwood floors, kids climbing my leather sofa, a slideshow on someone's laptop flashing family photos that didn't include me. "What's this?" Margaret waved a hand, her laugh brittle. "Oh, just a little family gathering. We figured since you were away, we'd surprise everyone with a reunion. Liam and Claire worked so hard on it." Liam, my brother, the golden child who could do no wrong. Of course he was behind this. I spotted him across the room, emerging from the kitchen with a tray of drinks, his real estate agent smile plastered on. When he saw me, the tray wobbled, and for a split second his mask slipped. Guilt? Panic? Hard to tell. Claire appeared beside him, whispering something that made his jaw tighten. I turned back to my mother. "A little gathering? There's 100 people here." 120, actually," Claire chirped, gliding over with a proud grin. "The Harper Wilson family reunion. Everyone's here, even Great Aunt Helen from San Diego. We've been planning for months." Months. The word hit like a slap. Months of planning, and not one text, not one email, not one hint to me, the co-owner of this house. I co-owned it with Liam, a deal we'd struck after Dad died to keep the place in the family. I'd poured my startup equity into the down payment, while Liam leaned on Claire's rich parents. We'd signed a legal agreement drafted by my lawyer Sarah to protect our spaces. His first floor, my upstairs apartment, clear boundaries for shared areas, boundaries they'd just obliterated. I pushed past Margaret, ignoring her protests, and made my way to the stairs. The air was thick with perfume, sweat, and the tang of cheap beer. Someone had moved my framed tech patents from the coffee table to make room for photo albums. Kids were playing Fortnite on my custom-built gaming PC, its cooling fans screaming in protest. In the kitchen, Aunt Patricia was dishing out lasagna from my cookware, the set I'd told Liam never to touch. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding, and reached my apartment door. It was unlocked. My private sanctuary, my fortress, was wide open. Inside, the violation was worse than I'd feared. Air mattresses covered my office floor, strewn with sleeping bags and kids' toys. My bed was unmade, the sheets rumpled with unfamiliar stains. Suitcases were stacked in corners, one bearing a sticker from a rival tech firm, Next Gen Solutions, a company I'd clashed with over patents last year. My tech awards, including my IEEE cybersecurity medal, were buried under children's crayon drawings taped to the walls. I opened my dresser to find my clothes shoved aside, replaced by strangers' belongings. My safe, where I kept backups of my proprietary code, was ajar. I yanked it open, my pulse roaring in my ears. The USB drives were gone. I sank onto the bed, the room spinning. My years of work, the backbone of my encryption protocol, was missing. This wasn't just a family reunion. This was a setup. I grabbed my phone and opened my security app again, digging into the logs. The system hadn't crashed. It had been manually disabled at 3:17 a.m. that morning, using an override code only I should have known. Or so I thought. Liam had access to the house. Had he gotten the code somehow? Or worse, had someone else? A crash from the bathroom snapped me out of my spiral. I rushed in to find a boy, maybe 10, standing amid shattered glass. My father's antique pocket watch, the one he'd given me at my MIT graduation, lay in pieces on the tile. "I was just looking," the kid mumbled, backing away. I knelt, picking up a fragment, the engraved, "To Emily, my star," glinting under the light. My throat tightened, but I swallowed the grief. There'd be time for that later. I returned to the bedroom, my mind shifting into crisis mode, the same mode that had gotten me through DDoS attacks and corporate espionage attempts. I started photographing everything. The air mattresses, the open safe, the broken watch, the next-gen suitcase. Each click of my phone's camera was a lifeline, anchoring me to a plan I hadn't fully formed yet. I needed evidence. I needed control. A soft knock interrupted me. Liam stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face a mix of discomfort and defiance. "Em, can we talk?" He closed the door behind him, shutting out the party's noise. I sat on the bed, crossing my arms. "Explain." He ran a hand through his hair, the gesture so familiar it almost hurt. "Look, this reunion, it got out of hand. It started as a small thing, just local family. Then Aunt Patricia got involved and it snowballed. We thought, with you in San Francisco, the timing was perfect." "Perfect for what? Turning my home into a frat house? Stealing my code? Sabotaging my security system?" His eyes widened. "Whoa, stealing? Sabotaging? It's a family reunion, not a heist. And this is our house, Em. I co-own it. My apartment is my space, we agreed on that, and my security system didn't disable itself." He shifted, his gaze flicking to the floor. "Maybe it glitched. You're always tinkering with it. Don't gaslight me, Liam. Someone used the override code." Before he could respond, the door opened and Margaret stormed in, Claire trailing behind. "What's going on up here?" Mom demanded. "We have guests wondering where their hosts are." "I'm asking Liam why my home was invaded without my consent," I said, my voice ice cold, "and why my safe is empty." Margaret's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Emily. It was a last-minute decision. We didn't want to bother you with your conference." "Last minute? Claire said you planned it for months. Cousin Ryan booked flights 6 months ago." Claire stepped forward, arms crossed. "We didn't think you care. You're always locked in your office, coding or whatever. You skip every family event. So you lied about my schedule, disabled my security, and let strangers sleep in my bed? Real nice, Claire." "They're not strangers," Liam snapped. "They're family. And yeah, some elderly aunts needed your room. You want them sleeping on the floor?" "I want to be asked. I want my work protected. I want my home respected. Margaret sighed, her tone dripping with condescension. You're taking this too personally. It's just a party. Your things are fine. Another crash echoed from the bathroom. I bolted back to find the same kid, now with a guilty look, standing over a broken mirror. Shards glittered on the floor, reflecting the chaos of my life. I turned to Liam, Margaret, and Claire, my voice shaking with rage. This is fine. My father's watch is destroyed. My code is gone. My security is compromised. And you're telling me to calm down? Liam opened his mouth, but Claire cut him off. While we're here, Emily, we've been thinking, since you're barely home, maybe you'd consider selling your half of the house. We could use the space, especially with a baby on the way. The room went silent. My vision tunneled. A baby, a buyout, the pieces clicked together. Liam's financial troubles, the reunion, the missing code. This wasn't just negligence. It was a calculated move to push me out. I spotted a manila folder peeking from under a suitcase in my closet. I yanked it out, finding Liam's financial records. Defaulted loans, maxed out credit cards, a letter from a bank denying a mortgage refinance, and tucked inside, a memo with the Next Gen logo, outlining a consulting deal with Liam's name on it. I held up the folder, my voice deadly calm. Care to explain this, Liam? His face drained of color. That's private. Not when it's in my apartment, not when it's tied to the company trying to steal my work. Margaret grabbed my arm. Emily, stop this. You're embarrassing us in front of family. I shook her off, grabbing my laptop and the folder. I'm leaving. Don't touch my stuff again. I pushed through the crowd downstairs, ignoring the curious glances. In the kitchen, I smelled something acrid. Gas. A burner on my stove was hissing, left on by some careless guest. I shut it off, my hands shaking, and checked the room. No flames, but the air was heavy with fumes. I opened the windows, my heart racing. One spark and this house could have gone up in flames. I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door, but not before overhearing Liam on the phone in the study. Yeah, the paperwork's almost ready, he was saying. Once she sells, we'll flip the house and clear the debts. Trust me, she'll cave. I slipped out into the night, the party's laughter fading behind me. In my car, I called my best friend, Jess, my voice trembling as I recounted the nightmare. Stay with us, she urged, but I needed solitude. I checked into a Marriott downtown, the city's skyline glittering through the window. In my room, I spread out the photos, the folder, and my laptop, piecing together the betrayal. My security system logs confirmed the override. The Next Gen memo suggested Liam was selling my protocol to a rival, and the gas leak? An accident or something darker? I opened my email to find a message from the London Cybersecurity Consortium, offering a 3-year role to lead their global encryption projects. The timing was uncanny, like a lifeline thrown just as my world sank. I drafted a text to Sarah, my lawyer. Need to meet ASAP, major breach of co-ownership, possible theft of IP. Then I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the night pressing down. Family ties endure, the banner had promised, but what happens when those ties are a noose? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. And whoever thought they could break me was in for one hell of a fight. The Seattle Marriott's sterile calm was a stark contrast to the chaos I'd fled. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my laptop glowing in the dim light, its screen a battlefield of evidence. Photos of my violated apartment, the damning Next Gen memo, and security logs confirming my system's sabotage. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to fire off emails, to Liam, to my lawyer Sarah, to the world. Demand. I stopped myself. Rage wouldn't win this war. Strategy would. I'd built my career outsmarting hackers and corporate spies. Now I'd outmaneuver my own family. The banner in my living room had proclaimed, "Family ties endure," but what endured now was my resolve. They'd invaded my home, stolen my work, and tried to erase me. They'd underestimated Dr. Emily Harper, and that was their first mistake. I leaned back against the headboard, the city's skyline glittering through the window. My phone buzzed relentlessly. 17 missed calls from Liam, 9 from Mom, a smattering from cousins caught in the crossfire. Their voicemails ranged from fake concern to outright hostility. Liam's latest: "Em, where the hell are you? Mom's freaking out. Call me." Mom's: "This is childish, Emily. You're embarrassing us." I ignored them, focusing instead on the email from the London Cybersecurity Consortium, a 3-year role leading global encryption projects with a housing allowance and access to cutting-edge labs. It was a dream job, a lifeline, but accepting it meant untangling myself from the mess back home. And that mess was growing uglier by the minute. I opened the Next Gen memo again, my eyes narrowing at Liam's name scrawled across it. The document outlined a consulting deal to deliver proprietary tech, my tech, to a rival firm that had been sniffing around my patents for years. The USB drives missing from my safe contained my AI-driven encryption protocol, the same protocol that had wowed Silicon Valley. If NextGen had it, my career could implode. Worse, the memo hinted at a deeper scheme: property acquisition to offset liabilities. Were they planning to force me out of the house to fund their failing ventures? The gas leak, the disabled security system, the collapsing chandelier? Accidents? Or something more sinister? A knock at the door jolted me. I checked the peephole, expecting a hotel staffer, but it was Aunt Eleanor, my father's older sister. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, her eyes sharp despite her 78 years. I opened the door and she stepped inside, her expression a mix of sympathy and steel. "I figured you'd need a friend," she said, settling into the armchair. "I didn't buy their story about you approving that reunion. Your face last night told me everything." I exhaled, grateful for her presence. "They lied to everyone, Eleanor, and my code's gone. My security system was sabotaged. I found Liam's financial papers, debts, failed deals, and a memo tying him to NextGen." Her eyebrows shot up. "Nexen? The ones you sued over that patent last year?" "Exactly. And there's more." I showed her the memo, watching her face harden as she read. "I overheard Liam and Claire in the kitchen last night," she said, lowering her voice. "They were arguing with their financial advisor about leveraging the house, said they needed to secure the asset before you got back. I didn't think much of it then, but now..." My stomach twisted. "They're trying to force me to sell. Claire mentioned it last night, like it was a casual suggestion. And the reunion? It's a cover, a way to paint themselves as the perfect hosts while they push me out." Eleanor handed me a small velvet pouch. "This was meant for the reunion's gift exchange, but you need it now." Inside was a locket with a tiny photo of me and Dad at my MIT graduation, his smile radiant. "He mailed me that picture," she said it was the proudest day of his life. He'd be furious about this, Emily." Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. "Thank you. And please, don't tell anyone I'm here." She nodded, her gaze fierce. "Your father always said you'd outshine them all. Don't let them dim your light." After she left, I dove into action. I emailed Sarah, attaching the photos and memo with a subject line urgent, breach of co-ownership and IP theft. Then I called Jess, my best friend, who listened in stunned silence as I recounted the night. "Come stay with us," she urged, but I needed this hotel's neutrality to think clearly. I opened my laptop and started digging into the security logs, tracing the override code's use. It had been entered from an IP address tied to my home network, but the device signature was unfamiliar. A burner phone, maybe? My mind flashed to the blinking device I'd found in my server room, its LEDs pulsing like a heartbeat. I hadn't touched it, fearing it was a trap, a malware injector, or worse. A text from my CEO, Vanessa, interrupted my thoughts. "Call me now. NextGen's claiming they've got your protocol. Investors are spooked." My heart sank. This was pressure point number 1. My career was on the line. I dialed Vanessa, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at me. "Emily, what the hell's going on?" she demanded. "NextGen's pitching your protocol to our biggest client. They say it's theirs. If you can't prove ownership, we're screwed." "I have backups in the cloud," I lied, buying time. "I'll get you the metadata by tomorrow. Someone stole my physical drives, but I'm handling it." "You'd better. The board's breathing down my neck. Fix this or we're both out of a job." I hung up, my hands shaking. The cloud backups existed, but accessing them required my secondary authentication device, which was still in my apartment. I needed to get back there, but the gas leak and collapsing chandelier made me wary. What if the house wasn't safe? I booked a locksmith for the next morning to install biometric locks on my apartment door, then started researching property management firms. If I was going to London, I'd rent out my space, keep my ownership, and block Liam's plan to force a sale. Sleep was impossible. I paced the room, replaying the night's events. The USB drive I'd found in Liam's briefcase gnawed at me. I hadn't cracked its encryption yet. My tools were at home, but its presence screamed corporate espionage. Had Liam sold my code to NextGen to bail out his debts, or was someone else pulling the strings? Curiosity point number 2, that family investment plan my cousins had mentioned. Was it a real estate flip or something bigger, tied to NextGen's interest in my work? At 3 a.m., my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. "Leave it alone, Emily. You don't know what you're messing with." My blood ran cold. I traced the number through a reverse lookup, but it was a prepaid burner, untraceable. Danger point number 2. Someone was watching me, and they weren't playing games. I forwarded the text to Sarah, adding it to the evidence pile. By dawn, I drafted a plan. Secure my apartment, retrieve my authentication device, hire a property manager, and confront Liam legally. But first, I needed to get back into my house without losing my cool, or my life. I arrived at the Queen Anne house just after sunrise, the street now eerily quiet, the party cars gone. The front door lock was sticky, taped over during the reunion to allow easy access, another violation. I disabled the tape and stepped inside, the air heavy with the stale smell of beer and lasagna. The living room was a wreck, stains on the carpet, furniture askew, a forgotten child's toy crushed underfoot. I climbed the stairs, my heart pounding as I approached my apartment door. It was still unlocked, a fact that made my skin crawl. I pushed it open, bracing for the worst. The chaos hadn't improved. Air mattresses deflated on my office floor. My tech awards still buried under stickers. The server room was my first stop. The blinking device was gone, but the cut wires remained. A deliberate act of sabotage. I checked the server logs on my backup tablet. Someone had tried to access my encrypted drives, failing at the biometric lock. Relief washed over me, but it was short-lived. I opened my safe again, hoping I'd missed something. No luck. The authentication device was there, thank God, but the USB drives were still missing. I pocketed the device and started photographing the damage anew, my hands steady despite the rising dread. A creak on the stairs made me freeze. I grabbed a heavy external hard drive, ready to swing as footsteps approached. The door swung open, revealing Liam, his face a mix of exhaustion and anger. "What are you doing here, Em? You disappeared last night. Mom's a wreck." "I'm documenting the damage you caused," I said, holding up my phone. "And I'm securing my space. You disabled my system, Liam. My code's gone. Care to explain? His eyes narrowed. You're paranoid. I didn't touch your precious computers. Then explain the next-gen memo in your briefcase, or the burner phone that overrode my security. He flinched, a crack in his facade. You went through my stuff? That's low, even for you, says the guy who let 120 people trash my home. I stepped closer, my voice low. What's the deal with next-gen, Liam? Did you sell my protocol to cover your debts? He laughed, but it was hollow. You're delusional. This is about family, not your tech conspiracies. Before I could respond, a loud groan echoed from the staircase outside. I pushed past Liam, my heart racing, and reached the landing just as the wooden steps buckled. The middle section collapsed, splintering into a jagged hole. I grabbed the railing, my knees weak. If I'd been on those stairs, I'd be in the hospital. Or worse. Danger point number 3. This wasn't an accident. Someone had tampered with the structure. Just like the gas leak and the chandelier. Liam, what the hell is going on? I shouted, turning to find him pale, staring at the wreckage. Did you do this? No, I swear I didn't. He stopped, his phone buzzing. He glanced at it, his face tightening, and shoved it in his pocket. We need to talk. Not here. I'm done talking. You'll hear from my lawyer. I grabbed my authentication device and bolted downstairs, avoiding the broken steps. Outside, I called the locksmith, moving the appointment to that afternoon. Then I contacted a property management firm, Elite Properties, scheduling an inspection for the next day. My phone buzzed again. Another text from the unknown number. Stop digging, or the next accident won't miss. My hands shook as I forwarded it to Sarah. This was no longer just about family betrayal. Someone wanted me silenced, and I was running out of time to figure out who. At Sarah's downtown office, we pored over the evidence. The co-ownership agreement was ironclad. Liam needed my consent for events over 20 guests, and my private space was untouchable. The missing USB drives and next-gen memo suggested intellectual property theft, a federal offense. Sarah outlined 2 paths: sue for breach of contract and damages, or force a partition sale, splitting the house's proceeds. There's a third option, she added. Rent your space through a management firm. Keep your ownership, generate income, and block Liam's buyout scheme. I nodded, my mind racing. And the IP theft? NextGen's already pitching my protocol. We'll file an injunction to freeze their use of your code, Sarah said. But we need those drives or cloud metadata to prove it's yours. Pressure point number 2 hit like a freight train. I had 24 hours to access my cloud backups and submit proof to Vanessa, or my firm could lose its biggest client. I left Sarah's office and headed to a coffee shop, logging into my cloud server with the authentication device. The backups were intact, thank God, but downloading them took hours I didn't have. As the progress bar crawled, I cracked the USB drive's encryption using a brute force tool I'd built in The files confirmed my worst fears. Liam had emailed NextGen excerpts of my code, promising full access for a 7-figure payout. The deal was tied to a family trust to secure the Harper estate, a euphemism for my house. Curiosity point number 3. Who else was in on this? Was Margaret involved, or was she just a pawn in Liam's game? I sent the decrypted files to Sarah, along with a note. Liam's selling my code to NextGen. File the injunction now. Then I called Elite Properties, finalizing the rental agreement. They'd manage my apartment, screen tenants, and handle maintenance, creating a legal buffer between me and Liam. By evening, the locksmith had installed biometric locks, and I'd moved my critical equipment to a secure storage unit, but the threats kept coming. A third text arrived. You can't hide in London. We know where you'll be. My blood ran cold. They knew about the job offer. How? Had Liam bugged my apartment? Or was NextGen tapping my communications? I forwarded the text to Sarah and Vanessa, who escalated it to the firm's security team. Pressure point number 3. Liam's lawyer called, threatening a countersuit for emotional distress, claiming my abandonment was destabilizing his family. It was a desperate move, but it meant legal fees, depositions, and distractions I couldn't afford. I instructed Sarah to counter with a cease and desist letter citing the co-ownership violations and IP theft. Then I emailed every relative who'd attended the reunion, my tone calm but calculated. Dear family, I was heartbroken to miss the Harper Wilson reunion, as I was never informed it was happening in my home. My private space was used without consent, and critical work was compromised. I'm thrilled to share I've been offered a role in London to lead global cybersecurity projects. I hope future gatherings can be planned with transparency. Warmly, Emily. The responses flooded in, cousins and aunts horrified, claiming Liam and Margaret had assured them I'd approved everything. Cousin Laura called, her voice trembling. They said you were too busy to care, Em. I slept in your bed. I'm so sorry. Curiosity point number 4. Laura mentioned a family trust Liam had pitched, promising generational wealth tied to the house. It was a scam, a way to consolidate control and sell the property for profit. The next morning, I returned to the house for Elite Properties inspection. The damage was worse than I'd realized. Water stains on the ceiling, likely from a tampered pipe, crayon marks on my office walls, and a lingering gas odor in the kitchen. Danger point number 4. As the inspector, Miss Collins, tested the stove, a spark ignited a small flame, forcing us to dive for cover. The fire extinguisher saved us, but my heart pounded. Another accident. Miss Collins was unfazed, documenting everything with clinical precision. We've seen worse, she said. We'll handle repairs and tenant screening. Your brother won't like it, but he has no legal grounds to stop us. Liam arrived mid-inspection, his face a storm cloud. What's this about renting your space? You can't do that. Actually, she can, Ms. Collins replied, holding up the co-ownership agreement. Dr. Harper's within her rights will ensure minimal disruption. Liam followed us, peppering me with questions. You're really going to let strangers live here? What about Mom? Mom's housing is secure, I said, my voice flat. Read the agreement. Margaret appeared, bursting through the front door. Emily, this is madness. You're tearing this family apart over a misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I snapped, finally losing my cool. You lied, you invaded my home, and you let someone steal my work. I'm protecting what's mine. You're bringing strangers into our home, she shouted. Your father would be ashamed. Pressure point number 4. Margaret clutched her chest, gasping, claiming a heart scare. I called 911, my hands shaking, but when the paramedics arrived, her vitals were fine. Stress, she mumbled, glaring at me. It was a manipulation, but it rattled me, making me question if I was going too far. I pushed the doubt aside, focusing on the plan. Elite Properties would rent my space, Sarah would file the injunction, and I'd accept the London job. That night, I cracked the final file on the USB drive. It was a contract between Liam and NextGen's CEO, promising my protocol for $2 million, 0 cents, with a clause about clearing the Harper property for additional funding. Curiosity point number 5, the contract mentioned a third party, Investor X, who'd bankrolled the reunion to soften the target. Me. The reunion wasn't just a cover. It was a distraction to keep me out while they raided my apartment. I sent the file to Sarah, my hands trembling with rage and vindication. Liam wasn't just betraying me. He was orchestrating a corporate heist. The next day, Vanessa called with good news. The cloud metadata proved my protocol's ownership. The injunction against NextGen was filed, freezing their pitch. But pressure point number 5 hit hard. NextGen retaliated, leaking a distorted version of my code online, claiming it was open source. I spent 18 hours straight in the hotel, coding patches to protect my firm's clients, my eyes burning, my career hanging by a thread. I sent the patches to Vanessa, who promised to push them live. "You saved us," she said, "but NextGen's not done. Watch your back." I accepted the London job, finalizing the visa paperwork. Elite Properties secured a tenant, a Stanford professor on sabbatical, perfect credit, no ties to NextGen. Liam's lawyer sent a desperate email offering to buy my share at full market value. I agreed, with conditions: a cybersecurity scholarship in Dad's name and Mom's housing protected for life. The deal closed cleanly, the funds hitting my account as I boarded my flight to London. In London, I thrived. The consortium's labs were a tech nerd's paradise, my team a global mix of brilliance. We secured a major bank's network, my protocol saving billions in potential breaches. Liam's email shifted from anger to reflection, mentioning Claire's pregnancy and his hope to be a better father. Margaret sent a tentative apology. "Maybe we should have told you about the reunion." I replied, "Yes, you should have," opening a cautious dialogue. 6 months later, I returned to Seattle for a conference. Dinner with Liam, Claire, their newborn Ava, and Margaret was awkward but real. Holding Ava, I saw Dad's eyes, a fleeting connection to a family I'd redefined. Margaret asked me to visit again, her voice soft. "Sunday breakfast?" I offered. She nodded, tears in her eyes. Back in London, I stood by the Thames, my phone buzzing with a text from Jess. "You're free now. How's it feel?" I smiled, typing back, "Like I've finally found my place." The reunion had broken me, but it also rebuilt me. Family ties endure, but only if they're built on respect. I'd forged my own, and no one could take that away.